All right, so for this week's project, we're going to be taking a look at another viewer-submitted unit. This is an Akai GX-620 Reel-to-Reel, and this comes from Franz. He lives in Orlando, Florida, and he's seen my video for another Akai Reel-to-Reel. I'm not sure if it was a 620. If not, it was a close one. May have been this exact one. And he got in touch with me and asked me if I'd take a look at his. Basically what happened here was these buttons for all of the mechanism control are illuminated, and he went in to replace the incandescent lamps with LEDs, and in the process of that something went off the rails, and so now it is stuck in the pause mode and won't go into play. So I'm not sure exactly what we're going to find. I did kind of direct him a little bit through some email exchanges about doing a little troubleshooting, but ultimately he wanted to send it in and have me take a look at it. So we're going to see if we can find out what happened in that process and get this thing back up and going. He's done some restoration work on this. The top of it is absolutely beautiful. The whole thing is in fantastic condition. So I'm really hoping that we can get this back up and going for him. So as always, we'll come in, we'll take a look at the front of it. I'm sure that the one on my channel, I probably went through all the buttons, so we'll just kind of briefly gloss over those real quick, and then we'll get right into getting it opened up and see if we can find out what's going on. Our intro music this week, we're listening to Led Zeppelin's 1976 release, Presence. And this is probably, if there's any album by Led Zeppelin that gets the least amount of airplay, I would say it was probably this one. In an iHeartRadio FM world, this album is probably never touched, but there's plenty of good music on this record. We're going to listen to the lead track and also my favorite track from this called Achilles' Last Stand. So let's hear a little bit of this and then we'll get started on the Akai. All right, let's briefly pick up and just take a look real quick at the unit. This is the top lid of it, and he's painted this kind of a, darker metallic gray. Looks really nice. The camera can't really capture the job he did here, but this looks real good. I'm saying that he painted this. I don't think it was factory like this, but it looks really, really nice. The side panels are in really good shape. On the edge, of course, you've got a little bit of, wear right on the very edge of the panels. But otherwise, overall, these look real good. When he did the painting up here, he was able to, preserve the sticker. Again, I'm not sure the camera can pick it up real good, but that looks real good. Second side panel, sticker still there. Everything looking good. Front of the unit. Definitely, this is an eye catcher. You walk into the room and you see this, your eyes immediately go to it. It's just such a very, very nice looking unit. All of this is in really good shape. There's just a few little flaws, nothing really that will detract from it at all. And other than that, all the rollers and everything look to be in real good shape. All the switches working good. The meters still have the green on the needles There's no cracking in it, or none that I can see just from the naked eye without magnifying it, but they look really, really good. And again, all the buttons, everything, all the knobs present. And then of course, this is the area we're going to be focusing on. There's a series of incandescent lamps in there, and somehow in that process, something happened. So we're going to have to get it opened up and see if we can figure it out. So I think the first step, let's go ahead and I'll start the disassembly process and get us down to where we need to be. And let's look at the work that he did and see if we can spot something. So give me a moment for that and we'll pick back up. Real quick, let's pick back up and just confirm what he has complained about. I went ahead and plugged the unit in. We got the meters backlit, so we know all that's working okay. We're going to go ahead and trigger the tape tension arm, and we can see the play button start to blink, which I do believe is normal operation for this. And if we kick it into fast forward, no trouble, it moves, it does its thing. But of course, when we hit play, we got nothing. And it also will go into rewind. No trouble there either. So, not real sure, something going on, but we ain't got any action on play. So, good enough, we'll go ahead and start the process and get it taken apart. All right, so I'm picking back up with you. Went ahead and got the unit apart and got this front panel button assembly out, or basically this is the membrane board. It sets or screwed into this button assembly here. This has all the buttons. I don't want to flip it upside down. If I do, all the little pads will fall out. But there's a little conductive pad on the back side of each one of these buttons, and basically what that does is when you push that, that pad will push into this little copper trace and short the inside to the outside, making a momentary switch. And so the idea was just to kind of get down to the point to see if the customer had possibly done something in his process of putting in the LEDs. Now what I found was, of course, he had went ahead and replaced back the incandescent lamps, and I'm pretty sure that was at my direction, because I told him that if you have something that's working, you do something to it, and now all of a sudden it's not working, basically just reverse the process and put it back the way that it was and see if the operation returns. So he did do that. There was one LED left in place here, but unfortunately that didn't get him back up and going. But what I was looking for is to see if there's any way possible, and this was what I was kind of hoping that he had done, was basically just severed a trace in this board, and that was somehow keeping the unit from going into the play mode. Now, one thing that I found strange, and I had mentioned that I thought it was normal operation, we have the pause lamp on all the time and the play lamp blinking. As it turns out, that would be normal operation if the unit was in pause, or at least I believe that to be the case now. But in normal operation, of course, the only light that would be on is the one that you're using. And so I'm pretty sure that the pause lamp being on all the time is not normal. So basically, I wanted to see here if maybe the customer had done anything. I'll try to zoom you in and get you a little closer here so we can kind of see what's going on. I did notice that there was a little trace damage right here, and that is for this LED. He had kind of messed up one of the traces. He did put a jumper wire on the bottom side of the board, but that jumper wire and that trace being damaged to the LED wouldn't really affect the continuity of the shared trace between all these little membranes. And so if we look at this, basically what we have over here is fast forward, we have play here, and then stop and rewind, record and pause. And so we're really paying, in particular, paying attention to play. Now the only thing that I've seen in play, and if we, again, this thing's not really cooperating based on the light that we've got available coming through this thing, but there is a trace right here. If we bend this light out of the way, you can kind of see it. Maybe I can get you in there where you can see it. There's kind of a trace right here that's damaged, but there is continuity between here and this one on play. And of course, there's absolutely no issue coming from the center tap of that switch into the connector terminal right here. There's no problem whatsoever there. So even though we do have some minor trace damage here, there isn't anything that would create the scenario that he's got going where it's basically in pause all the time and it won't go into play. Now, of course, it'll still go into fast forward and rewind. There's no issue with that. But I've looked into this a little further, into the logic or key controller they use to operate this mechanism. And that gets a little bit interesting. And I've done some voltage checks on it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop this clip for now, and I'm going to pick back up with you once I've done a little bit more investigation into that, because I believe what's going on is, and I'm not sure how it would have happened, but one or two things. Either the customer somehow inadvertently shorted out the source voltage for the lamps into the microprocessor and damaged it, or perhaps putting, I can't see putting in the LEDs would have created the issue. There is a lamp controller IC that kind of works in tandem with the key controller for the mechanism. So I don't know if there was something that, some kind of residual voltage that would have, a problem that would have occurred by putting in the LEDs. I'm just not sure. And so I think at this point, what I'm kind of leaning towards is we had an issue that the key controller IC that runs the mechanism, basically what happens is you push one of these momentary switches, and of course it will take a signal that's low and bring it high, and then start portions of the mechanism up. I believe something happened to that IC. That's really the only thing that's standing out right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get a different view going here. I'll bring you back and kind of show you what my findings are for that. But for right now, no damage. Even though there is some minor trace damage on this board, there isn't anything here that would prevent it from going into play, and certainly nothing that would create a scenario where it's constantly in pause. So give me a few minutes. I'll bring you back and let you know further on my discovery of, or what I discover in troubleshooting this. All right, so I'm picking back up with you, continuing on our troubleshooting of the Akai reel-to-reel. And for the moment, we've kind of set the switch assembly aside. We know that this was probably the catalyst of what created the problem, but it's actually not the cause of the problem of what's going on right now. So there is some work that's going to need to be done on this. We're going to replace all the older incandescent lights in the LED with new incandescent lights when we get this up and running. But for now, this is not really what we're trying to focus on. I'll get you in here a little closer so you can see. I got this guy's reel-to-reel flipped upside down. I've got the top resting on the bench so I can get a look at the component side of this board. In particular, one particular part, which I was kind of focusing on. See if I can get you in here. This space right here, which is IC1, they're calling this a key controller IC. And this is what's responsible for getting the mechanism up and going when you push a button in the front. So we have that. And from that point, we're going to go over and have a look at our schematic. And that's really going to tell the tale, basically, of what's going on. Let's see if the camera will agree. Show you what I've discovered about this. Maybe. I guess the first thing we'll probably want to do is let's scan down the page a little bit and get to this point. And this is where all of our switches are located, and the lines for our switches go up and come over to the right and go right into that IC. And where I started my troubleshooting was right on the input side of where the switches are at. And I'm not one of those people that insist on having a service manual for everything I work on. 9 times out of 10, I don't have a service manual, or I don't even bother looking one up. But when it comes to logic circuits, that's when it really comes in handy. And here it does come in handy. Basically what we're looking at is we're looking at the input side of the IC, and we're looking at around 4.8 to 5 volts on every one of these lines, with the exception of stop. Stop is at 0. So then we jump to the other side where everything's low, with the exception of the VCC. And we know we have power to the IC, because if we didn't, fast forward and rewind wouldn't work. So we know that's okay. There's no short on that line or anything crazy going on that line. But one of the things that I noticed is we do have low voltages on every single one of these with the exception of pause. On pause, I've got the exact same voltage, resting voltage in stop on the output side as I have on the input side. So I got 4.8 on the input, and I have also 4.8 on the output side. And so once I came to the conclusion that there was something going on here, I went ahead and unsoldered the pin of the IC from the pad of the circuit board, and I still had that voltage there. So there wasn't anything on the pad that was holding voltage there. It was the IC itself has a short in it that's creating that problem. And one of the things that I was able to do, as well as you can check one of these once I got it out of circuit, and by the way, this IC is a Mitsubishi made M54410P key controller. I'll show you the IC right here. And so once I had an idea, once I got it out of circuit and I had an idea that there was an issue with the IC, I just started tapping around on these pins, and I noticed something in particular, that pause and ground have a short 44 ohms together. And so that's definitely an issue. Now how that is still maintaining 4.8 volts there, I'm not sure, but we do have a short. I don't think there's supposed to be 44 ohms between pause and ground on this IC. So we definitely got an issue with this. I don't know if this is the only problem this unit has, but it is definitely a problem. I can see my battery's about ready to die on the camera, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring you back for the next clip, and I'll show you the measurement I made on the IC, as well as we'll finish up talking about another component in here that could possibly be an issue. So give me a second and I'll bring you back for that. All right, so we'll go ahead and pick back up on our little discussion here concerning the key controller IC. And as I was saying, basically what I found was there was the same voltage on the output side as there is on the input side with it resting in stop. So obviously there's something going on here. Again, not saying it's the only problem, but it is definitely a problem, or I feel like this is the problem. And the only other thing, we have parallel lines coming off the output side going down, and let's see if we can get you down there. And we'll take a look at this. This is the lamp driver IC, which is an LB1270. And this IC I was not able to locate at all. I was able to find a data sheet on it, and I'll see if we can pull that up and take a look. Let's see where that's at. This is the data sheet I was able to pull up on it. And as you can see, Chinese, Japanese writing, I'm not sure what that is, but it doesn't give me really any useful information. We get down a little further on the sheet, and I do start to get some numbers here for voltage in, voltage out, current in, current out, and so that's very helpful in letting me kind of pick out a different IC. And so what I was able to find for that, since that IC, I was not able to locate that IC online. I was barely able to get this data sheet on it, but what I was able to locate is I was able to locate this, which is an LB1272. And so in the event that IC would be bad, then we could probably substitute this one in. Voltages, the values for the voltages I think are a little bit higher as I compared them. And as far as the internal makeup of the IC, let's see if we can zoom in on this a little bit. If you compare these two, the internal makeup of the IC, they're exactly the same. I mean, the exact same resistor values internally, exact same pin configuration, everything. So if we have to switch that IC, if that one would turn out to be causing an issue, then I believe that would be a pretty good sub for that. Or at least that's the only thing I can find at this point anyway. So hopefully that's not the case, and we don't have to worry about that, and we can just replace the one key controller IC. So yeah, again, probably some kind of erratic short happened. I don't know, probably the pause line. I mean, the work that he did on this, you know, I can't really say what happened where. You never really know. It'd be kind of like electronic forensics trying to figure it out, but the fact of the matter is that he started off with a working unit, and then he wound up with one stuck in pause that won't go into play. So it's pointing right here, so we need one of these. I wasn't able to find one stateside, so we'll have to order one offshore from China. That's going to put a part 2 of this video probably about 2 to 3 weeks down the road before we can get that part in and confirm that we have a working unit again. So unfortunately, that's just how it is sometimes, especially with something this old. I was really surprised. I have a lot of these Mitsubishi ICs with a prefix of M544, but I don't have a 10P. And so it's too bad I didn't have the one that I need, but that seems like it's how it always turns out. So let's take a look at this IC, and basically what we're going to do here is just kind of a crude test. These things are really kind of hard to do any kind of real checking with, but we're going to attempt to do it. We know for a fact that we shouldn't have a line that has 5 volts on it normally going to ground. And so we're on basically pin 6 of this IC, pin 8 is ground. I mean, there's definitely an issue there. You know, 60-something ohms to ground, that's definitely a problem. And that's the only line that's like that. You know, if you go up to play, which is the first one, you know, there's no problem. That's up in the 12K region. Same if you go across here. You know, as you go across every one of these pins, that's the way, you know, these are all checking. And so I'm going to have to say that we definitely got something going on here. So that's how I kind of came up with my conclusion, and we're going to kind of use that as the basis for getting a different IC. So basically we're going to order ourselves one of those ICs up. I've already spoke to the customer earlier today. He's in agreement with that, and see if we can get his unit back up and going for him. So anyway, I want to thank you guys as always. I appreciate you checking out the video this week, and as always, appreciate all the new people that signed up, and hopefully you find something of interest here. So until we can pick back up with this one, probably be a couple of weeks or so. There'll be something next week. I'm not sure what we'll come up with, but I'll find something. And I really appreciate you guys getting in contact with me, trusting me with your equipment to troubleshoot it for you and get it working again. So as always, thank you, and we'll catch you next week.